welcome everybody to the official first podcast that I've ever organized. I guess I should say I've been on a few, but the first one I've ever actually done. And the new podcast that we're doing is officially going to be called On The Virg, and that's because I am Virgle Osborne, your state representative for House District 2. I also have here with me as a guest, I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Trent Drake. I'm the executive chair for the Douglas County Central Committee, Republicans.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. So, guys, I just want to get with everybody and explain first off what the intent of our podcast is. The intent of this podcast, the reason I wanted to put it together is for a number of reasons, but the most foremost important reason I think that we want to do this podcast is simply to community engagement, to get people involved in what happens in Douglas County, not just on a regular basis, but on a political basis, so people understand what's going on in politics. And I'm in the middle of session right now. Luckily, I have Fridays where I can come down, and eventually this podcast will probably be moved to Sunday. But my intention is to update people and let people know what we're doing in Salem and keep everybody apprised. Of course, I'm a conservative Republican, and so this podcast will be swayed a little bit toward the conservative side, but I believe Douglas County is a pretty conservative place. Would you agree, Trent?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll do that. But also, again, I think what we want to do is you'll see several people come onto the show, and we're not biased against any particular, Democrat or Republican, for that matter, independent party. We do want to have people join the show that bring something of interest to the county and something that benefits the people in the county, and not just the county, but this House District 2 and the state for that matter. So 70% of the show will probably be discussing politics, but 30% of the show we may talk about whatever is of interest that day. We may bring in some special interest folks and that want to talk about, I don't know, how trees grow. It doesn't matter to me. But the fact is, we want to keep this thing rolling, and we want this place to be a better place to live. So with that, we'll start out a little bit with some politics. Actually, let me back up on that. We will have opportunities for sponsorship of this show. Right now, this is the first episode, so we don't really have much. You're going to see some cuts from this show that are going to be advertisement. Twin Peaks Off-Road, of course, is my company. We'll be sponsoring this show too. It does cost a little bit of money to do these podcasts, and we have some great folks here in downtown Roseburg that are able to put this together for us. So we want to make sure they get paid, and we want to bring them into the mix here. So we're going to talk about local and state politics, and with that, I think we'll start out with. I'm going to ask Trent what's happening with the Republican Party.
Well, right now we're just in a growth phase, and basically working in a culture to just be able, like you said, to reach out to not just Republicans but to everybody. We are also planning a huge event in June.
Oh yeah,
yeah. We're doing a fundraiser at Bar Run. It's going to be a full staged luau with Adam Carolla as our keynote speaker.
Nice. So is that something that you guys do every year?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's our main fundraiser for the year, and a way to, raise funds to help you guys and anybody, especially in local races. Our function really as the local Republican Party is to support local elected officials.
Great. And from what I've seen, especially in the last year or two, the Republican Party is doing fantastic. I know, the Umpqua Valley Republican women as well have donated a ton of money. I've been to some of their events. You've obviously been to most all the events that I've been to, but weren't you recently elected as the party chair as well?
I was. In November. They had their new elections and was elected just before Thanksgiving.
And that happens every 2 years, I think. Is that correct? It's every 2 years, I believe they do. So this being a year where we now have Trump as our new president, and obviously the political world is on fire, which is in some ways good. Some people don't think it's so great. What do you see in the Republican Party in Douglas County? Do they seem to be sticking with Trump, or what are they doing?
Absolutely. Yes. The answer to that is yes, and they're very energized. In the past, anytime we had received any kind of a win, there would seem to be a little bit of a lull. But we've kind of taken a different approach, and what we're really doing is we're running for the future. We're helping you guys to expand the party and really to, at some point, really create a blueprint in Oregon the other counties can follow the same thing, to really create a more balanced political scene in Oregon, which we don't have right now.
Yeah, I agree. The state's been under Democrat control now for almost 30 years, I think. There was a time back in the early 2000s, I think, when the legislature was split 50-50. And from what I understand, being in the legislature now, when that was split was the most productive time the state had, because all interests were represented. It wasn't just one party or the other. And I can tell you right now, in the House of Representatives, it is absolutely I mean, this is a podcast, so I won't cuss on it, but it's pretty much a slaughterhouse right now. I mean, the Democrats, and not because they're Democrats, but because they're the majority party, they are pretty much pushing their agenda, and their agenda works for, frankly, urban parts of the state, but it doesn't work well down here in Southern Oregon and Eastern Oregon, where rural folks are really suffering. I think it's important. This podcast, again, this is just our first one, and we're going to try to do this on a regular basis. But I think it's important to understand that we will get, I know there's a lot of people that are going to want to comment on stuff that we're going to be talking about for the next several months or hopefully several years if this thing is successful. I think that we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to respond. I know I do a lot of radio and now TV interviews with reporters, and people like to talk about stuff, and we want input, whether it be good or bad. I mean, one thing I learned: when you get into politics, you get thick skin, or you get out, or it drives you crazy and you have a heart attack. And I don't want to do that. So my skin is considerably thicker than it used to be. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit more about local politics. So as you know, we just had this major flood that hit, and I was on my way back to Salem when it hit. I believe it was on a Sunday, and I was going back to Salem to be on the House floor and work session, and I was watching social media, and it's like, holy cow! It's like, what happened in Douglas County? And I'm seeing pictures of houses underwater and seeing driveways missing and culverts and stuff. And did that affect you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially out in in Winston area, we were hit with water. And growing up here in the 60s and the 70s, I saw flooding before flood mitigation and after flood mitigation, and was really shocked at the amount of water that really came down the tributaries in a very short period of time. And we're talking like 45 minutes when this all happened. My parents' house actually had water clear to its foundation, which...
Yeah, I saw some of the pictures you said.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't believe it.
The 1964 flood, it was over 30 feet away from the house.
Yeah, that's just crazy. Did they lose anything, or?
No, thank goodness. There were people up the street that we helped. They did manage to lose insulation and stuff like that. But there were some significant losses here in the city of Roseburg and in the county.
Yeah. Well, immediately as things started to unfold, being in Salem, my phone started ringing, and people were saying, "Hey, we need help. What are you going to do?" As a state representative, I did the only thing I knew to do, and that was I contacted Governor Kotek herself, who responded immediately. And I basically let her know, I'm like, we have a major emergency disaster in process, and I knew the rivers hadn't crested yet, so I knew it was going to get worse. And she committed that at whatever power she could on a state level that they would help. But really, I feel that a lot of people don't understand the process, how FEMA works and how emergency disasters work. And really what happens first is the cities have a level of disaster that they have to meet to start kicking in funding from FEMA, and the counties also have to have that. So what happens is the county commissioners are kind of like I wouldn't say the ringleaders, they're kind of like this, yeah, kind of. It's a circus, and they're the ones that are kind of directing things. You can't just call the state and say, hey, I need $5,000 to fix my basement. You have to report what you have damaged, and then all of that cumulative have to reach a certain amount before that city or that county can be considered a FEMA emergency. Is that what you understand?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I talked with one of the commissioners last night, and the amount of hours that they have put into this has really, in my opinion, they've went above and beyond what their pay grade is to that very end.
Yeah. I mean, it's... it will have one of the things that to get federal money coming, and this is not just for emergencies, but this is, for instance, like the broadband money that we got, the $750 million in my first term for in 2023. There were $750 million coming from I forget what it's called, the Inflation Reduction Act, I think is what it was called. And that was all directed toward increasing broadband availability in rural Oregon communities. And the feds don't just write the check and say, here, go do this. What they do is that money gets funneled through an organization or an agency within the state. And that organization or agency has to funnel that money to where it's needed. And in this case, it's Glide Revitalization. Glide Revitalization is the entity that FEMA picked to basically take all the caseload. Right. And Gina Beam, she's the president of that, and she does a fantastic job. I've been in touch with her on a regular basis, and when people call me and they say, "Hey, we have an issue. We had to spend this money," or now the issue I think is black mold that's going to grow under basements and in the crawl spaces, and there is grounds for reimbursement or help, but it has to be funneled through that. And then I think each case will be, basically looked at on a case-by-case basis. But I know it was a heck of a disaster. In the last 6 years, we've had more natural disasters than in this county than we ever had when I was growing up here. And I've lived here since I was born here. The interesting thing about natural disasters is that it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican. If you're in that disaster, you're in that disaster. And I know, having worked with search and rescue for, I've been part of the team for almost 25 years. We don't ask anybody their political opinions before we go rescue them. We just go rescue them. We're not worried about that kind of stuff. So, it's reaching back. The wildfires, the Arch Creek fire, that was like 2020. Was crazy. I was one of the first on scene for that to evacuate people. And you've lived here longer than me. I mean, have you seen anything like that before?
Not to the degree of what we're seeing. Growing up, obviously the argument is, the forests were managed a lot better than they are today. And we had forest fires, but not forest fires that lasted for 4 months, and causing the damage and seeing the heat index that they create is completely foreign to what we've ever seen.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I've had a lot of my colleagues, even in the House of Representatives, a lot of my colleagues will blame the forest fires we're having today on climate change. And I sit on the Committee for Climate and Energy and Environment in the House, and I just am not that guy that's ready to say that climate change is what's destroying our world. I truly believe, because I've seen it in my, lifetime here, that in the 80s, when we decided that we didn't want to log anymore, that our forests were replanted from the time that we had logged prior, and we put 10 trees for every tree that we took out. And I think the full intention in the 80s, when we did that, we were going to come back and we were going to thin those trees and we were going to manage our forests. Well, along came the spotted owl. And when the spotted owl came along, all of that went away. So from what I see, and maybe you see it different, but from what I see, we have a horrible forest management issue.
Absolutely. As someone who's walked these hills and mountains and forest all my life, I've spent every hunting season either in the Cascades or the Coast Range. You don't see the amount of fuel on the ground in the 70s and 80s and early 90s that you see there now. You see multiple years of windfalls, pre-burnt trees, which are the worst. I'm being in the insurance industry. One of the things that we look at is, in mitigation, is there pre-burnt timber around you, and it needs to be removed because it's like charcoal in a barbecue. It's hotter than fresh wood.
Well, and you can't fight those fires either when you have dead timber standing, because it's going to fall. It's going to fall on you. If firefighters' lives are more important than to put them into that situation, which limits the amount of ability to fight forest fires. You can fight them from the air for the most part, and I can tell you from being, like I said, literally the morning the Arch Creek fire started, I got a call out at 4:30 in the morning for the French Creek fire. We evacuated most of North Bank Road. And after that, we were happy because it was over. We thought we were headed back to the shed, and we got the call to go to Susan Creek. That was around 10 in the morning. I don't know exactly what time the Arch Creek fire started, but it was a Star Mountain fire when it did start. But when we got there, the fire was so intense, we couldn't stay there. We were trying to figure out a plan to start evacuating people, and all we could do was go door to door and run, and just to keep from risking our own lives. And there were several situations in the next 2 following days where there was a lot of folks that did risk their life to make sure that people got out. Amazingly, 30 miles of highway was evacuated, including an entire city, and nobody died. Right. It was a crazy event. But to that point, and let's just go ahead, and this question was asked, and I think it's important. We've seen an increase in homeowners insurance because of the wildfires that have happened not only in Oregon, but also the wildfires that happened in California just recently. And you're an insurance agent, so tell us about that. What do you think?
Well, I think a lot of it is, I believe the Arch Creek fire for us was the beginning. One of the things that you saw was years worth of inventory go up in smoke for private landowners. I believe I was told that one large mill lost 3 years worth of inventory in a short period of time, which that's when the 2x4s got really expensive. And so that drove it up. And then you had the claims. We were very fortunate in Douglas County. There weren't a lot of claims from then. There were homes that burnt to the ground, but not to the extent of other counties. So, we were very fortunate in that, but that drives the cost going out the door for a company. The very beginning happened with the Paradise Fire in California. It literally shut down insurance companies that were some of the oldest in the nation because they couldn't pay all of the claims out. Yeah. And so, as that pool dwindles down, it drives cost up for replacement costs. And in that now there's also, you're starting to see changes in the policies that older homes, even if they were completely remodeled from the ground up, because they're a certain age, they're not going to get replacement cost anymore. So and that's just a small part of it really is, and then of course, what you and the rest of our representatives and senators have been involved in is, of course, the fire mapping and how it's really affected the insurance industry in that area too. So with some of the work that you guys have done, hopefully that will
start to undo it.
Yeah. So at least alleviate the pain a little bit.
So Senate Bill 762 was passed, I believe, in 2021. That was after the Arch Creek fire, and also there was the fires down in Phoenix, Oregon, and then there was the Santiam Canyon fires, which were some of those fires. The loss of houses were greater because there were more density. Especially when you get down around Ashland, the density of the housing was higher than it was for Arch Creek, but nonetheless, still huge loss. Senator Golden, which was our senator, still is our senator from Ashland, he wrote legislation, and the legislation created the fire maps. And the fire maps, basically, the intention was good, but the unintended consequences were horrible. The intention of the fire maps were to basically define those areas that were potentially wildfire within the WUI, which is the Wild Urban Interface, was to define those areas. And by defining those areas, it was meant that they would bring resources to those areas and do mitigation work in those areas that would potentially, in the long run, make those better. The unintended consequence of 762 was that it also gave the state the power to fine you for not doing the work. It gave the state the power to come in and enforce, or for that matter, practically, and I think in some cases, basically say your house isn't livable, or, condemn your property. Well, that didn't go over well. So in the first year, I think it was in 22 or 23, I don't remember, they redrew the maps. Well, the redrawing of the maps really didn't change the bill. It just made it more defined, if anything else. And so that obviously became an issue. And then there was a deadline. There was a timeline that was ticking. And so you had a certain amount of time to appeal your finding that what the state found your property to be. And that all came up. We had a public hearing, but we had an information session on that here a couple months back. And you were part of that as well. That sense has changed. Now we have Senate Bill 83. We also had House Bill 3944, the almost identical bills, and these bills are to repeal the fire maps. there was a group of folks in Salem, elected representatives and fire, fighters, and there was 35 people on this group. They call it the Fire 35, and their job was to go through and try to figure out what to do and how to fund it. Right. So funding is a big piece of this. As you know, in 2024, we had the biggest wildfire season ever. We burned 2 million acres of land, and we had no way to pay for it. So we shorted our firefighters $200 million almost. Actually, it was more than $200 million, and we had to come back and do a special session to find the money to do that. But these bills get rid of the maps, they get rid of the enforcement, and then they also they're working on another part of the bill, which is probably the more difficult part. They're trying to find a way to fund it. And they need to raise $150 million. I don't know where it's going to come from. I have a suspicion they're going to try to take from your kicker. I'm not for that. I think it should be general fund money or lottery fund money, but I think they're going to try to take it from your kicker because that's what the Democrat Party does. So we'll yet to see where that goes. Now, House Bill 3944, which was actually written by the same person as Senate Bill 83. The House Bill 3944, I voted no because in our committee we voted to send it to Revenue. Revenue is a place where bills go to die. Ways and Means is definitely a place where bills go to die. So my intention was I wanted House Bill 3944 to go through and go to the House floor to be voted on. Instead, we got Senate Bill 83, unfortunately giving Senator Golden the credit for fixing his mistake, which I think is a mistake. But unfortunately, Senate Bill 83 will come to the House and we will vote on it, and I believe it will pass. It's already out of the Senate, I think, now. So anyway, a lot more to come on wildfire stuff. That's going to be a real big issue. But I think probably, Joe, what do you think the number one issue in our state is right now?
From a business aspect, I would say actually,
if you were walking down the street and you asked 10 people what's the most important thing to them right now in state government, what do you think it would be? What would be your top?
The homeless issue.
The homeless issue, yeah. I think you're probably right, although I do think that there is a lot of ancillary bills and other stuff that's happening right now that are affecting, people's concern.
Well, we have all the gun bills, and we've talked a lot about that.
Yeah. Well, I think that the homeless issue now has gotten to the point where it's kind of taken second seat to the tax issues.
Oh, yes.
As you probably read, $1 billion just disappeared from ODOT. They still don't know exactly how they made a mistake in their budget for $1 billion. That's millions with 1,000 behind it. So, yeah. But somehow or another, they that money that they thought they had, they didn't have. But regardless of that, the transportation budget that there's being proposed now, have you seen it?
I have not.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, it comes with a 20-cent per gallon gas tax increase. Now to phase that in, they're going to do 8 cents at a time and 5 cents one time or whatever it was to get to that point over the course of a couple of years. But it's 20 cents a gallon. That puts us at one of the highest in the nation.
Put us approximately 80 cents a gallon
in gas tax.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just one thing. There are other things. They actually want to raise the payroll tax 16.9%. To help cover some of that as well. Things that are just small business killers. And they also want to charge a tire tax, 3% tire tax. And we don't think about a tire tax as being a big deal because 3% tire tax, how often do you buy tires for your car? Once every probably on average 3 years. But if you own a big truck firm and you have, say, 20 semi trucks rolling down the road and they're each putting, 500,000 miles a year, now you're talking about a lot of money. I know you're friends with Ken Wood with Spinner Trucking, and we're all friends with Andy from A&M. What do you think they'd say about that?
There's a point in business when it won't make any sense to be in business anymore, and those could be factors that cause those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing, and we say it, we being the Republican Party, but we see a lot of that in committee, and that is one of our biggest arguments. We say, look, you're making it so hard to do business in Oregon that business doesn't want to do itself in Oregon. They're moving to other places. In fact, some of the trucking companies are already talking about starting to purchase their trucks from out of state. Daimler Chrysler, which is actually based in Oregon, most people don't know that, their trucking part anyway. They're talking about huge layoffs.
Absolutely. I've got several business friends that have taken their headquarters out of Oregon and moved it to Nevada and created Nevada Corps, just for that very reason.
Yeah. I in every committee that I serve in and in everything I see because we get together as a caucus daily and we talk about bills that are coming through, whether it be a union bill, that seems to be a real big deal in the state. They want to preserve unions' rights and they want to increase union rights, or whether it be an increase in taxes or whatever it may be, it seems to be geared toward hurting business.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is, at least in the House side, you have 60 people sitting there as representatives, and not everybody has ever owned a business. And in fact, I'd say less than half of the folks that are making these decisions have never been in business. And it's pretty hard to know what it feels like to sit down and write that check to the IRS every month unless you've done it. So I hope that we start to see a turn in Oregon, but I fear that we're not.
Right.
And that could be devastating for our economy, especially our small rural economies. One of the things that was a really big deal in the state that went through the House a couple of weeks ago was the ag labor bill. And, it sounds good at face value. The ag labor bill basically says we're going to give the agricultural workers, in other words, the migrant workers, the folks that work in the fields, pick the grapes, pick the whatever it is they do. We are going to, the state wants to create a committee or an agency that studies, which ultimately suggests that they unionize.
Right.
And the argument to that was, if you unionize our ag workers, you will put small farms out of business. And we literally have lost, I don't remember the number now. I was quoting it a time or two, but I want to say it was 200 family-owned farms or something. 2,000, family-owned farms that we've lost in the last 6 years. What happens when you have a labor union come in? The wages have to, the wages go up, although I believe that most of our farms are paying a fair wage. But it also creates, issues with benefits, time off, late overtime, all of this stuff. And now those family farms won't be able to afford to do that.
Exactly. And I grew up in the farming and ranching culture.
Yeah.
And there's no way that makes it sustainable, because, when the harvest time, there's no 8 hours. It's you work till it's done.
Exactly. And that was one of the arguments I heard one of the farmers say.
Yeah.
The problem is once farming becomes insolvent and you can't do it, then the only thing left to do with that land, you get two things left to do with that land. Number one, you sell it and you turn it into housing or whatever, which is a huge waste. Or you sell it to the big farm, right? The Simplots and the, Monsantos, all of those guys. And then it becomes corporate farms.
Right.
And that's not good for our state.
No. To that, over in Eastern Oregon, there are several big farms and ranches. I actually have a couple insured. Even at that level, that would make them struggle.
Oh yeah.
And they've all said that. They said, we can't go there from here.
Well, again, I think you have, in the House right now, you have 24 Republicans who all opposed it. You have 36 Democrats who I'm assuming are all going to be for it, although I think there are some that are rural Democrats that are against it, but they're still going to vote with their caucus. But you have people that have, literally no farms in their districts.
Right.
You have people from downtown Portland districts that are deciding the fate of rural Oregon. Therein lies the problem with our legislature. Unfortunately, a lot of the Republicans, myself included, we take the heat for it sometimes. We are the minority party.
Right.
Minority party has one job. Our job is to find a way to begin to be in the majority. The majority party is to govern. And so all we can do is try to keep them honest. And this is really a tough deal at times. And I will tell you, there are a number of Democrats in the majority party. I'm not going to name names today, but I can tell you there's at least 4 that I'm friends with. And they all think that the direction that we're headed is crazy. Now, they are also afraid to buck their party. They are going to stay with their caucus, as majority parties do.
Right.
So unfortunately, we may feel the results of bad decisions made because of people's agenda, as opposed to, anyway. I don't want to beat that topic up. Let's move on to a different one. What do you know about the gun bills?
Well, it sounds like right now you did overcome the buying guns at 18. Do I understand that correct?
It's in work. It's in the works. Yeah, there's definitely some negotiation going on behind the scenes.
Right.
Trying to get really bad to just bad.
Right.
But I don't think, and I'm not involved in that negotiation directly, although I'm aware of it because I'm the whip of the party, so I'm in leadership. I think that I don't know how you can undo enough in any of these gun bills to make them even close to acceptable.
Exactly. And what's interesting too is and again, I think this is more public perception that I see out there. It is almost to the point that they're putting things out there and then trying to get it tested in the courts.
Yes, I would agree. And 114, which is already in process of being tested by the courts, and I'm sure will end up in the Supreme Court. House Bill 3075 is basically 114,
right?
Almost to the T. So I think we'll see if the Supreme Court hears the arguments on 114. We'll probably see 3075 die. 3076 goes a little bit more beyond that. And then, of course, Senate Bill 243 is an omnibus bill, which creates just the absolute worst gun bills in the nation. I don't understand. I mean, I'm in politics, so I live this stuff every day. But what do you think the public feels about this? I mean, I think, at least in rural Oregon, the public is just going, what is wrong with government? What do you think?
I think you've hit it right on the head. And it's almost like there's a feeling of oppression, because the gun rights are something that we've carried from the very beginning of the founding of our nation, and, you and I both grew up with guns. Our father taught us respect to those guns and to follow those laws. And, we have good gun laws on the books. It's just they've created there's no consequences to your actions. And a lot of people I talk to out there, if we would just follow what we've got, could solve a lot of issues.
Yeah, enforce the laws that we already have.
Yeah.
I completely agree. There are laws there's one that you brought it up. They're trying to work on the not being able to purchase a gun until you're 21 or even own a gun or possess a gun. But yet at 18, you can go in the military and you can go shoot somebody, right? We expect you to be mature enough to go to war, but then kind of like this circle of hypocrisy that I see, and I don't understand it. It just goes so against the values of at least rural Oregon and myself.
Right. Yeah. In the gun bill, it's a touchy subject. It's very there's a lot of TNT inside of that when you start having conversations with people.
There is, and I don't see an end to it. I know I probably get now around 50 emails a day. Our Republican leader, caucus leader, gets. She had a stack she showed on the House floor of 400 emails that she printed out, and that was just a week's worth of emails and countless number of calls. The majority of the state, and I mean by far the majority of the state, do not want these gun bills to pass. And they are being very boisterous about it. I don't know if you've gone online and looked at the amount of testimony that has been registered because of it. But yet the legislature seems to be deaf to it. There's no reason these bills should ever get out of committee. But yeah, here we are. They've all passed committee on party line vote. And I am definitely concerned that they're going to get to the House floor and to the Senate floor, and they will. So we'll see where it goes. Now, the 3075, 3076 were both passed from committee to Ways and Means. They both have pretty good sized fiscals on them. Ways and Means is a place where bills go to die, especially in a year like today because our budget is so bad. So it will be because the Democrats decided to bring it out of Ways and Means that it actually makes it to the floor. I'm hoping that calmer heads prevail,
Right.
and that things get changed. For that matter, Ways and Means can work bills and change bills. And for that matter, on the floor, we can call it on the floor to send it back to rules, or we can send it somewhere else. But, we'll have to wait and see where that goes. So it's sad, but we'll see. Now, of course, they're talking about walkouts. I get multiple emails a day asking me to walk out. Would the walkout happen in 23? And when that happened, we came back with one less Senate seat because of Measure 113. And we came back with one less House seat, which put us from the simple minority into the super minority in both houses. Unfortunately, what I don't think people realize is that was a risky thing for the Senate to walk out. But when you're talking about 12 people walking out, it's a whole different ball game when you're talking about 24. When you get to the House side and 24 walk out, we have swing seats. And if we walk out at 24, we'll come back with, if we're lucky, we'll come back with 20. Likely we'll come back with 19. At 19, we can't even deny quorum. So that means when Tina Kotek calls for a special session, and she will, they'll do whatever they want. And we won't have any control over it. So let alone several other issues like, do you really want to lose 24? Do you want to lose your entire team at one time? Because that's what will happen. And no experience at all in the House.
Right.
I mean, there are folks there that have been there a long time, but there's also a lot of good direction. I mean, we have leaders that have been there for, 3 terms, 4 terms. We have people that understand the flow of the House. If you literally take everybody out of the House and say, here's 24 new people, it would be scary. So big concerns. What do you want to talk about today?
Well, I'm just excited that, this is something that we've talked about for
Yeah.
quite a while, and it's kind of amazing that we got to this point, considering where we started at. How many years ago now? 4 years, going on 4 years?
22. I
Yeah.
think you and I talked about me running for office, and you're like, yeah, we should do that. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Bam, here we are.
Yeah, it's amazing what pizza and beer can do.
Pizza and beer can really make your judgment poor at times. But yeah, I'm excited too. And I think I'm excited to be representing the state, to be honest with you, and especially this district. A lot of people don't know what a House rep does. We have some authority, right? I mean, we make laws. That's what our job is. But, our districts are around 75 to 77,000 people. We won this district pretty readily at about 70% of the vote, which, shows the district is fairly red because I'm pretty conservative. But I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have got here without the help of you. And my chief of staff, Jen, helped a ton, both in campaign, and she still works for me today, and she is really hardworking, along with all those other folks, and frankly, our Republican Party and our Uncle Valley Women's. I mean, the list goes on.
And we're very fortunate as a county, too. All of our elected officials are all Republicans.
This is true.
And so we have a way to have conversations. I get calls in my office all the time, hey, I've got this, and I'm able to direct them to you or to Alex Carlatos or to Court Boyce or to David Brocksmith, because that's where where that begins.
Yeah.
And, and I was on a Zoom meeting with the Oregon Republican Party, and there's a lot of counties, they have no representation at all. And what I've done, I've offered, if you do, call me and I'll connect them with you. At least there's a way to get help to create a balance, and that's one of the things that, as the executive chair for the local party, my goal is to balance that sheet out in the next 26 is coming. And, I'm fighting daily on this, to help, make those 24 chairs 31 chairs.
That would be outstanding.
And I think it's a doable thing to bring that back to a balance. Like you said, back when,
Bruce Anna.
when Bruce was the Speaker of the House, Oregon was doing really, really well. And it was a balanced on both sides. I'm a big reader of history, and one of the best memoirs I ever read was Tip O'Neill. And Tip O'Neill was Ronald Reagan's best friend, but he was the Democrat Speaker of the House. And in his memoirs, he said, no one party should have too much power because then they don't get anything done.
Yeah. Well, and I think in the days when Bruce, of course, Bruce is a very good friend of mine as well, and yours too. When he was the Speaker of the House, it was co-chair, or co-speaker. It was 30-30, and basically both sides had to agree before anything was brought forward, because they needed one vote either way. Because 31 votes wins a vote in the House, and that would be amazing if we could get back to even 30-30, and for that matter, even within two. Would give you leverage to discuss. I don't think most people understand how politics works when it comes to the gavels in your hands. So politics starts with the speaker. The speaker makes a decision. When a bill is written, the speaker assigns it to a committee. When the committee gets it, the chair of that committee, and only the chair of that committee, decides whether or not he or she wants to hear the bill. And she has the gavel in her hands. He or she has the gavel in her hands. If they want to hear a Republican bill, they can. If they don't have to. You can't sue them. You can't change it. The only thing you can do is elections change things. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which team you're on, we are where we are. And now, once you have the gavel in your hands, you can steer the committees. I've been really fortunate this year in my committees. I have had chairs that have been, I truly believe, engaged with the state. They understand the needs of the people in the state. One of them is Daniel Wynn. He's a Democrat. He owns restaurants all over, Portland. Yeah. In fact, he came down here, and he was a chair of our Economic Development Small Business Committee, and we did good things. I mean, there might have been one or two bills that I didn't like, but there wasn't anything that we did that I thought was just horrible. One of those things, we gave money to fairgrounds, right? We gave a little bit more money probably to the arts than I probably would have done. But of course, those go to Ways and Means, and then they funnel all that money out. They decide what to spend. But that's not a bad thing. Taxes are bad. So anyway,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, not at all. It's, I think we've got a lot to look forward to, people. Some people in the community, like they're down and out and they want to change the name of the state. And it's like, but that isn't how politics works. If you don't like it, you don't bring in another state. You do the right things to balance the sheet.
Yes.
And, the more people we can have in that conversation, that we can bring to the table, really, I think, and you guys are doing a great job. You in particular in this community, like you said, in the last election, you brought in 70+% of the vote. And a lot of those were Democrat votes. I know that for a fact because, I have my my finger on that pulse. And so, it's because of the conversations that we're having. If we can have those conversations, and, I call them the big boy, big girl conversation.
We need more of those.
Yeah, and we don't need to yell and scream at each other. We just need to talk until we find that common ground. I think all of us have more in common than we disagree on. And it's American to disagree.
It is, and I agree. And there are certain values that I do not bend on.
Right.
But I'm very conservative when it comes to finances. But I'm also very, very big on your rights. Your rights to say what you want to say. That's your right. I mean, First Amendment says you can do that. The Second Amendment is there to protect your First Amendment. I shouldn't say it that brutal, but it's a fact. I mean, that's why it was created, so that we have a checks and balances over our government. So, we'll see. I think this district, this community, and this county became more red in the last election by 5%? I think we grew it a little
5%,
bit.
Yeah. In the state as a whole, the Republicans actually outgrew by almost 2% over the Democrats and the non-affiliated voters.
Yeah.
And that just shows you the pulse of what people are starting to think and what they're looking at, I believe. And especially in the age groups, one of the things that I try really hard to do is have conversations with people younger than me. Yep. 20s, 30s, and 40s, and I don't advise them or anything. I just ask them, are they happy with the way things are going?
Better off now than you were.
Yeah. And I let them talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to give them advice or unsolicited advice.
I love to work with kids, and if you follow me on social media, which a lot of people do, I have a ton of followers, and I always encourage more I just spent last Monday when I should have been in Salem. I took the time off to go to Looking Glass Elementary, and the teacher there had asked me to spend some time with. I don't never got a kid count, but I'm guessing there was about 20 of them, maybe 20. Seemed like 100. They were all between ages of 4 and 5, pre kindergarten. And the teacher just wanted me to spend some time with them and talk to them. They wanted to focus on transportation. So we sat there, we had a conversation about the forms of transportation. We talked about riding horses. We talked about, cars and trucks and motorcycles. And it was amazing. Of course, I brought my Jeep with me because they had asked me to bring something to the kids, and the kids just loved it. I mean, they were climbing all over it and everything else. But it is amazing how you can spark just a fire in a kid's eye over something little like the Jeep, or just a conversation. And I've always told people, make a difference in one kid's life, just a little bit of it, to the better. You don't know how far that ripple effect's going to go. I mean, President of the United States probably had something happen to him when he was a kid that affected what happened later in his life. We need to help our young kids. We need to.
Absolutely. I've always said that. You never know who you're sitting next to.
That's right.
And how they'll affect the world after we're gone.
Yeah. Absolutely right.
And we've had a lot of those people from this community.
That's very true.
Yeah. Over my lifetime, I've been able to either be a service to them or, friends of them. It's funny when we get to this point in our life where, oh yeah, we're friends with them.
Because we're old.
Yeah.
I have soft spots in my heart for different groups. I mean, veterans, I love them. I mean, I respect everything veterans have done for this. I mean, my dad was a veteran. My brothers were both veterans. Many of folks in my family were, involved in the military, but also elderly, right? I mean, elderly need us. That's why, we're going to be able to, if we live long enough, we're going to be elderly one day. So they need us, and kids. And then I have a soft spot for animals. Yeah. If you don't like animals, then just, please don't be my friend. Go away. Who doesn't like dogs, right?
I got a dog and 4 cats.
I know. I've been to your house. And listen, I'm not a big fan of cats, but I love cats as long as it's somebody else's cat, right? I don't need to have it at my house, but it's fine. So
He had rats when my boys were.
I'm not a fan of rats, but hey, it's an animal, and I mean, I respect animals. I mean, I'm a hunter. I've hunted my whole life, and I will continue to hunt. But respect them. We don't just go kill deer to kill deer. We go kill a deer to feed our family or whatever it may be. That's how the Indians did it, and that's how we do it. So anyway, well, thanks for spending an hour with me.
Yeah.
Talking about whatever.
Yeah, we don't get to talk much anymore because you're in session.
I know. Hopefully be back soon.
Yeah, 2 more months.
That's it. Well, hey, it looks like we actually have a couple of questions today that were submitted to me on our chat. Let's see. Let me. I'm gonna go ahead and read the first question. I guess we can both take a shot at answering and see how we do on this. First question is this is from Justin. It says, "I don't feel like either party represents my political views. However, living in rural Oregon, I don't feel like Democrats are focused on rural issues. How much does the Republican Party focus on rural issues versus Republican issues, and how much do those cross over?" Well, I love this question because I get it all the time. And if you follow me on social media, or you follow any of the stuff that I do in the Capitol, you'll find that, especially in committee, you'll hear multiple times that if we're going to do something for urban Oregon, we need to be doing it for rural Oregon. I think the problem is the disconnects, the urban-rural divide. And unfortunately, we as a party, either party, tend to be more focused on the major issues, right? For the Democrats, it's probably, I don't want to get into too far into the weeds, but, abortion's always been a big deal, right? Abortion, taxes, climate change, et cetera, et cetera. Republican Party is anti all that, plus we have our own agenda as well. My feeling is that I am a rural Oregonian, okay? I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. In fact, I just met with a great group of folks a few weeks ago that that they represent the LGBTQ folks, and their biggest concern was DEI, right? And we got that right up front. It's like, I do not believe in DEI. I believe you are rewarded by your merit. We are all living in this together. If you're good at something, then you have the right to do it. Now, they're also concerned about homelessness. Yeah. That's another big issue for them. I'm concerned about all those things. And I think that particularly in this district, and also I think, with our Senator David Brock Smith, and I think Alec's an amazing representative. I didn't know. Well, he was a wild card. He's never been in politics before, but he's done amazingly already. We all care about rural Oregon, right? First and foremost, and you'll hear it in his testimony. If it's not good for rural Oregon, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So, last case in point, we just passed a bill out of committee that gave $10 million to Portland to work on their waterfront park. I was adamantly against it because I said I have cities in, my district that can't even get the money to fund their water tanks for their water systems. But because we passed that bill out, and prior to, we also passed a bill that gave, it was like $3 million to Union County to put the infrastructure in their fairgrounds. And the chair called me the night before the vote, and we had a discussion about it. I said, look, $10 million is too much. That bill, of course, went to Ways and Means, but I said, the fact that you have been a chair that has focused on not just urban, but also rural Oregon, I'm okay with that. So I'm fine if Portland getting $10 million, as long as, Douglas County and other urban or rural counties get equal treatment. And so that's what makes a good chair. And I think that's what makes a good politician.
It's important to know what's going on in the metro areas, but because of the economic differences, it's really hard to blend the two. But you're right. If they're going to do this for one city, and don't get me wrong, the waterfront in Portland is amazing. I used to love to go there for festivals and stuff like that. And it's a great economic builder for that city. But when we sit down here and, like you said, and there's nothing, and it's really, again, it's a political imbalance. And those people that put that in, they never come here even to take a look. It would be different if they came down and, hey, yeah, we came, we saw.
But our chair did. He did come here. He actually spent time with our local businesses, and even as a Democrat, we got some good stuff done.
Yeah.
So amazing. Well, let's keep moving on. I just got another question here. It says, I see so many things posted on Facebook about politics happening in Douglas County, but it's always second or third hand information. How can someone in Douglas County get more factual updates on local politics and other than social media? Turn your social media off. That would be my first thing I would say, because there's a lot of garbage on social media, and there are a lot of people that fundamentally do not understand politics. They have an agenda. They have an opinion, which is great. Everybody should have an opinion. That doesn't mean it should be shared. There are a lot of things that are said and done that are just factually not true. If you see it on my social media, or if you see it on my newsletter, it is factually true. We don't lie. We tell people the cold hard facts, and that's just how it is. So other ways to get informed: Wednesday morning, 9:00. Every week, there's a commissioner meeting, happens in room 216 at the courthouse. If you've never been, and you have even the audacity to complain about a commissioner's decision, then you should go to the meetings.
Yeah.
You should be involved. We have an election coming up in May. We have the Umpqua Public Transit District has, 4 seats?
Four seats that are up. Yep.
And that information is readily available. But again, not very many people ran for those seats. We have, I think the school board has a seat, ESD has a seat. There's several political spots open in the county. The only way to find out that information is to get away from your Facebook and get involved. And you owe it to yourself, because it's the outcome of the way you're going to live for the rest of your time here in this county.
Yeah, and I would say to that too, if someone was curious on who to talk to, contact me. At least I know where to go. I'm not going to give you the answers on those, but I will tell you who you can talk to that would.
You can actually, there is the Republican headquarters, which is right downtown, that you can visit. Some great folks there. And, they will, if they don't know the answer, they'll send you the people that do. And I'll just tell you, be it a legislator, I don't know all the answers either, but I do have one advantage. I surround myself with people that do. And I know there's always somebody I can reach out to and find out. And that's what it's all about. That's how you become a good leader. So I think that's about all the questions I have for today, but look forward to seeing everybody again. We're going to continue with this podcast, and we will be open to having incoming text messages for questions soon. We're going to have more guests on the show as well. And this hopefully is going to be a fantastic thing.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me
All right,
too.
cool.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.